Hi everyone, welcome back to Demand Decoded. I'm Dan Stilgo, marketing manager at Blend, and well, this was a really crazy hour or two. We had George Boot, demand generation manager at Nomupay, come into our studio where I'm sat now at Blend, and we went live on LinkedIn. We chatted about all things personal brand and really dug into the incredible job that he's done, not only building his own personal brand, but also building the personal brand for two executives at Nomupay too, which has had a huge impact on their brand and growth as a business. And, I think as marketing evolves, being able to build the personal brands of subject matter experts in our companies will become a key skill. And George has really been a early mover to that and been able to kind of, craft these personal brands and tell a story through them that connects and engages an audience and ultimately benefits the business at the end. So yeah, what you'll be hearing after this is our LinkedIn Live discussion. We were running for just over an hour, I think, but it was really good, in-depth, and some tactical information too on how you can build your own personal brand and how you can build and get consistent content from key people in your business in order to adapt to evolving buyer preferences and ultimately drive revenue and growth for your business. Let's get into the episode. This podcast is brought to you by Blend. We're a B2B website and demand generation agency. We work with ambitious businesses just like yours to create and execute effective demand generation strategies that drive pipeline for your business. We also recognize that your website is the most important asset you have in marketing. So we specialize in building scalable websites on HubSpot that convert the demand that you've created. If you want to find out more about our services and see real results that we've generated for businesses, visit blendb2b.com.
We are live. I love it. I love it. I'm so here for this stuff. I think this is great. Kind of doubling down on my LinkedIn post today, actually, which is everything about LinkedIn Live. But for the context of anybody tuning in, I am with Dan today down at the Blend offices in Reading. This is the lovely studio of the Demand Decoded podcast, and we're here to talk about personal branding. He kindly invited me to come and talk about this kind of stuff, and I'm really excited to get into it. Let's kind of dive in, because we've probably spoke for about 3 hours prior to going on on these cameras. And I'm keen to dive into it because we've got a lot to talk about. But how did you want to start?
I mean, really, I think just telling everyone why I actually wanted to talk to you about this topic, because we met about a year ago now.
Yeah.
Around that time anyway, at the demand gen community, which you and Sarah are running, which is great. And I've really admired what you've done for your own personal brand and what I've seen you do for people that you've worked with, like Justin and Grant.
Yeah.
And I don't know, almost just your forwardness when it comes to personal branding and content creation, and like just some of the things that I've seen, I just thought, wow, like you are doing exactly what marketers need to do today in order to differentiate themselves and their businesses, to connect with people and build authentic connections in a world of like AI generated content and inauthentic content that's out there. Building human connections and personal brands is so essential for all businesses and people today.
For sure. Yeah, I suppose we'll go back a little bit into essentially how it all began. Back in 2015, for anybody that's interested, is the fact that's when I started in payments. And payments is an industry that obviously isn't going anywhere. People are always going to need to pay for something. So I started in my sales career really back in 2015 at Barclaycard, just as a telephony sales guy in the Wolf of Wall Street kind of like environment, as it was, where you had a board up on the wall and everybody would go and put a line next to where they would get a sale and all that kind of stuff. And I did that for a period of time, and that was fun. And then I left at that around 2016. So I did that for a year. And then I went and did some traveling around Australia, worked for my dad for 3 years. And then I came back again because I knew payments as an industry wasn't really going anywhere. and I got myself an account management job for another payments company called Trust Payments. I did that for a while, and then the door at Barclaycard opened back up, so I went back in there as a business development manager. And at the time, it was a little bit of a scale up, so I was dealing with that kind of mid corporate space at the time, where again the buyer journey. I talk about the buyer journey now a lot, but at the time, I look back at it and think there's a lot of things I would have done differently in regards to prospecting and stuff. But I would have, back then I probably did that for, I think it was around 18 months at the time. And it was very stagnant for me. Like, that was when I started to realize that the traditional go to market methods are getting outdated. If they weren't already outdated, they were getting outdated. The cold call, cold emailing, email campaigns, whatever it might be that I would try would just be ignored.
Yeah.
So with that, I wanted a next step in my career. I then went over to Truvo Payments, which are a Maltese-based acquiring bank. And again, from a BD perspective, did that. And that was where I first got my exposure to podcasting in the B2B world, which was, at the time I wanted an avenue where I could speak to prospects, speak to partners, speak to ICPs, and just generally do some market research in the areas I wanted to go and win business in without trying to sell to anyone, and have a conversation with someone and not feel like I was selling to them. So I approached the marketing team and said, look, do you mind if I start one? And they were like, okay, well, if you've got everything you need. Yeah. And it was like, I kind of come with all the platforms that I needed, started having some conversations. We started repurposing that, and that then evolved into personal branding for me. Didn't really know what it was. It was a bit of a buzzword at the time.
Yeah.
And I'd argue it probably is a bit of an icky buzzword at the moment, which is personal branding, because everybody thinks it's personal and selfish, which I completely disagree with. And then from there, it kind of scaled, and I was, briefly made redundant at that time. And then I moved to acquired.com, which is where I met Justin and Grant, who you've just referenced.
Yeah.
And from that point, it was a case of, right, I'm not the expertise in payments in this business, but I've got two that I would argue are.
Yeah.
And that was when it was. So at the time, Justin was head of sales and Grant was head of partnerships. Now, I'd seen them in meetings. I'd seen the amount of knowledge they had, and I thought, if they're up for it, they could potentially be, pioneers of a little bit of a strategy that I had only in my head at the time, which was, how do I take their brands, how do I take them and their voices and their knowledge and put it on a public platform where I was always educating myself that buyers they were just there.
Yeah.
They were just craving for some form of content that would resonate with them, that wasn't, a gated white paper from a normal payment provider or whatever it might be. They just wanted authentic connection, and they wanted to, just interact with content while they were on the train on the way home, while they were on the train on the way to work, while they were at home and sofa, when the kids are in bed. Just that kind of authentic content that we all consume on every other platform in our spare time. So why would it be any different? And from there, it kind of grew pretty rapidly.
Yeah.
We put ourselves on the map. We became, I think I said to you earlier, we became the, I'm going to steal it from you, but we became the sidemen of payments is what we were classed as.
The other reference?
What did we say?
Payments Posse?
Payments Posse. That was it. Yeah.
Brilliant. Love
the
it.
Payments
Absolutely
Posse.
love
Yeah,
it.
that was it. And, we became this, trio of kind of, when it comes to payments expertise, it was very much them than it was me.
Yeah.
But I was kind of the little kind of brain behind everything that was saying, right, how are we going to create more content? How are we going to keep up with trends? And then, we all kind of left acquired.com and came to Nomupay, which was 6 months ago. And that again was a process that was born out of personal branding. The reason Nomupay came to us was because we had what they wanted, and we were constantly talking about problems and issues that merchants were having. We were a voice in the industry, or they were a voice in the industry, and it kind of just grew from there. Really, it's all come around pretty quickly.
Do you think that coming from sales and having a sales background has given you any kind of advantage, or like leading edge in terms of like being able to be comfortable in front of a camera, being able to address an audience at a wider scale, all of those kind of things that I think salespeople generally have in terms of like being quite charismatic, being slightly extroverted, that make you more comfortable to do like personal branding and less like cringy around it?
Yeah,
too?
I think personal branding, again, I don't think is something you have to do on video. or you have to
Okay.
do on
Yeah.
audio. You know, you look at famous authors, right? I'd argue they're some form of personal brands, right?
Mm.
They're authors. They write books. People, I can't say that I'd walk around London and notice an author and recognize an author, but that doesn't mean other people won't. But yes, in the answer to your question is 100%. Sales taught me how to engage in conversation. It taught me how to identify key pieces in, I don't know, certain value propositions that each business had, because every payments business is different. They sell payments differently.
Yeah.
So being able to identify those kind of key aspects within a conversation of a podcast will allows me to be a better host. Being able to listen to a conversation and quite frankly understand what they're talking about, whether that's a partner that we have or a prospect or a merchant or even a form of technical product guy that we have. But yeah, fundamentally, sales teaches you so much. I mean, fundamentally, it teaches you how to be rejected, especially in the old
Yeah.
way. Anyway, rejection was a big thing in sales, and I think in sales you've got to get used to no more than yes.
Yeah. And people disagreeing with you.
I mean, I think anybody would agree with me that, quite frankly, you're naive to think that you should walk around life and everybody agree with what you've got to say anyway. That's just something that I live by, and I've kind of built this brand for myself in payments when it comes to personal branding that I genuinely believe it's something that everybody can do. They've just got to be willing to do it.
Yeah. You kind of said the initial spark and motivation was from almost like realizing what happens in day-to-day life and how our like content consumption habits have changed away from payments, away from B2B industries, and adopted that. But like, what made you actually think this is a true business opportunity, especially in payments as well, which has some historic and traditional like
And it still
marketing
does, yes.
fundamentals attached to it? This is quite like forward thinking for payments.
I mean,
and has maybe given you the advantage there by being
first. Yeah. I think that personal branding, again, for me is very, very simple. It's just a case of it's a digital reputation. In sales, in any industry, my auntie's got a hair salon. She'll hire people based on how many clients can you bring to my salon. It's the same in sales. People will hire you for a black book, and I don't think that's any different, except now it's scalable. You can scale that black book over time, and it doesn't matter who you work for. So yeah, I mean, we started it initially. I started it as initially because I was in the weeds of trying to get customers and trying to fill my own pipeline. So I thought, well, I'm going to try something different that nobody else is doing. But at the time, I wasn't the expert. So I was just documenting a journey that I was going on through LinkedIn, and I was kind of leveraging my network to create engagement and conversation. And I thought, okay, well, and then I started to see, it's not just payments people that are commenting here. It's actually, I don't know, payments at New Look, payments at XYZ, blah, blah, blah. They were giving me advice.
People, yeah.
And I was like, okay, this is interesting. And then I was like, when I got to Acquired and I had the people that were willing to do that for me and be the expert behind the camera, it was okay. Now we have something scalable.
Yeah.
Because now we can create not necessarily a podcast that's just an interview-based podcast. We can create a podcast that's actually valuable for somebody to listen to. You look at all of the podcasts that we engage with consistently in the marketing space. They're founder-led content-based podcasts. And there's somebody addressing a camera directly and delivering content and giving you valuable advice. And that's what we eventually scaled it to.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think a lot of marketers actually appreciate this right now. I think especially forward-thinking marketers know that personal branding and almost like personality-led growth and demand generation is important, but they are not the people that can deliver the expertise to the market.
Correct.
It's different, right? If you're selling marketing services and you work in marketing, okay, like you're good to be the subject matter expert, maybe, if you are a particular expert on a niche, maybe. But payments, manufacturing, life science, like insurance, banking, all of these other sectors have subject matter expertise that aren't marketers, that aren't people that would naturally put themselves out there. How did you go about like getting buy-in from the people like Justin and Grant who have now like been able to grow their audience so much and benefit from it? Like, how do you get that early buy-in? Because how can people try and do the same in their business?
Well, I mean, if I take you through exactly how it happened, it was very much, you know, every payments company I've been into and I've worked in, there has been the common struggle has been pipeline growth. It's not been the salespeople that work there. They've all been incredible salespeople and they're able to sell the product. The issue has been pipeline growth. So when I started to explore demand generation as a motion itself, I started to educate myself on the fact of why we were stagnant in pipeline growth. And it's not to do with the salespeople. It's not to do with the internal functions. It's not to do with the expertise internally at marketing. It's to do with the modern buyer and how they want to buy something.
Yeah.
And when I started to educate Justin on that, and it would be every night sending him LinkedIn posts from people, Chris Walker here, Gary Vaynerchuk up there, boom, 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 and sending him loads of stuff. And although I was helping him do so, he was also self-educating himself as a head of sales that had a team of 4 or 5 people that were also, that as a team had a stagnant pipeline. It was a case, well, it's like the kind of definition of insanity. If you're going to do the same thing over and over again and get get a different result, you're quite frankly insane.
Yeah.
You've got to try something different. So we went down that route, and Justin was the person to start that, because fundamentally, I think you have to start top down with these kind of things. Ideally, I would have liked to have started the CEO, but things were different then, and we couldn't necessarily do that. But yeah, getting buy-in is about just continuous education. It's about showing them the differences, how it can benefit them. And I think one piece of advice that I've got for anybody that might be listening down the line or on the live now, but if you can educate yourself around something that's going to make your boss's life easier, that's an incredible hack for a career growth. If you can show your boss something that's going to make their life easier and grow, if it is a sales leader, if it is I don't know, whatever the role might be, if you can make their lives easier, self-educate yourself around that, be passionate about it, it's going to work. As long as the strategies you're looking to, they're backed by data to say that they worked. And that was all the things that I was sharing with Justin, is the fact that, 80% of the B2B buyer today does all their research prior to engaging with your sales team. So why don't we look at being a part of that 80% of the journey prior to cold messaging them, emailing them, trying to call them, and all of that just started to snowball into essentially into him creating a personal brand, and Grant followed.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So did he see Justin's success?
Yeah, he did.
Early
he won't like me saying it, but he did.
So he saw a few comments from the right people, a few likes, and he was like, "Oh, I want to slide."
Yeah, Grant there's this running joke between Justin and Grant, actually, which is obviously Justin started first by a couple of months, and then Grant followed, but Grant has now overtaken. In regards to a following count and stuff like that. So there's always a little bit of competition between the two of them, and it's great to see, because at one point they were pushing back on the idea, and now they're like, okay, well, now we need to do more.
Well, so on that, they were pushing back. I'd love to know why they were pushing back and how you collectively got over the hurdle to carry on and like get to where you are now.
Yeah, I mean, the initial pushback is always the same. For anybody that I'll speak to at the Demand Gen meetups that we do, it's always the question of why me? What have I got to say? It's the why would anybody listen to me? I don't know what to talk about. All of these things are only things that you tell yourself that are just to cover the insecurity of, I don't really want to post on LinkedIn because I don't want to, I don't know, upset my future boss. I don't want to upset people, or people are going to complain about the way I look, or all of these things are just different types of insecurities that are playing their mind. And unfortunately, I would love to give you a 15-page document on how to get over insecurity, but unfortunately there is one answer, and that's you just have to start. You just have to do it. You don't have to jump right in at the deep end, which is go live on LinkedIn like we are now. You don't have to go on video. Just start writing your thoughts and your feelings on LinkedIn around your profession, what you're learning, and quite frankly, scale from there, because that's all I did. I think the issue that some people go down the line of is they want to present themselves as an expert when they're not.
Yes.
And that, quite frankly, whether that's the brutal truth about it or not, I wasn't the expert at the time. I'm still not the expert. But if you go through my content, I don't act like an expert. I'm always kind of just looking for advice. I'm always giving my opinion. Whether my opinion comes across as strong or not, it's still, I'm not saying this is true. This is something that you have to do. And I think the moment you start to look at your content as an enthusiast versus an expert, that's when your game changes, because you're always asking for advice. You're being empathetic towards an audience. And, you've got to be a seriously, bad kind of person if you're going to call out someone for trying to educate themselves on social media. And quite frankly, that person's got a lot more issues than you have. So I'll just laugh them out of the room. I feel bad for them.
Yeah, it's true. I think commitment is a word that comes to mind when thinking about podcasting, personal branding, consistent like production of content and distribution of that too. One thing that we did when we started Demand Decoded was, every podcast was a LinkedIn Live. And that was intentional, one, to grow our audience, because, whilst we had a smallish audience already, they weren't engaged consistently like with our content. So LinkedIn Lives, enabled us to grow that further, and like repeated listenership as well on top of that. But also a huge part of it was actually getting a date in the diary that we could commit to and not want to let people down. If we had 50 people registered and let's say 25 turn up to the live, you don't want to disappoint those people. And like, even though, do they really care? Like, if we cancel one, maybe not, but you felt a sense of commitment to turn up, to be there.
It's discipline.
Yeah. So like, how did you get that discipline and that commitment with Justin and Grant and whoever else in order to create consistently?
Fundamentally, it was our podcast. It, like yourself, right? It was creating a podcast that not only benefited the personal brands of the people on the podcast, it also allowed the back end functions of the marketing element to be able to function better and more efficiently. So, for example, if we create a podcast with an ICP, instead of having an external, content agency write a blog for us that was SEO optimized, we were able to take the transcript of our podcast, which was our own IP, from an ICP, and be able to repurpose that in multiple different ways. But the podcast we used to release, I tried to stick to once a week. But again, we were still very much an interview based. I say interview, but it was more of we would always have a third guest on. So it would be myself as the host. It would be either Justin, Grant, or somebody else in the organization, and then a prospect or a partner or somebody else. Because again, although there's elements that with our podcast that we wanted to bring the expertise, we would often use that content, build them into sales cadences for certain ICPs. So we wanted to be seen to be talking to the ICP when building the sales cadences out. And, one of the ways that we started to actually do it, just taking a quick tangent into how we built this into a go-to-market strategy, was we would take the podcast, or I would go and find a guest based on, an ICP that we were targeting at the time. And we would create a sales cadence. We would create a podcast 6 weeks prior to an event. The event would be the end of that sales cadence and that outreach program. What we would do is we'd create a podcast, we'd create multiple transcripts, and we'd create posts and email chains and stuff like that. That would be built into a Sales Loft email cadence. People aren't available, people don't know who Sales Loft are. It's just an outreach tool. That outreach tool would then power a 6-step cadence to a specific audience using the content we've already created from somebody that is speaking at the event at the end of that of that cycle. And then at the end of that event, we'd also have Justin on stage at that event. And all of the emails would be coming from Justin. Justin would be on the podcast with me. Justin would be speaking to the prospect that's also on stage with him at the event. And the amount of hits that we got from that and the success rate of that was out of this world in regards to what I could expect, because I'm not a massive fan of email campaigns anyway. But when they're done right, they can be successful, but they've just got to be done right. And I don't think we should be reaching out to people unless we've got a reason to. And when I say a reason to, I mean those people have told us they're going to that event at the end of the year or at the end of our sales cycle. So we're gonna tell them that we're talking at the event, we're talking to your ICP, blah 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 blah.
Yeah, it's like occupying mind share, isn't it? It's like Justin was in the mind share
Yeah.
of that audience for, you know, this period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what content they consumed within that space, like Justin was there.
Yeah.
He was there.
Yeah.
He was
100%.
everywhere.
Yep. He was everywhere. And I
Justin's
think
there, Justin's
we've
there,
had
yeah.
that. Like, we've gone to meetings before, and you know, and it's like, oh, you again. And
Yeah.
if I'm not, and that's not to me, that's to Justin. Right? So, oh, you're always on LinkedIn now, aren't you?
Yeah.
And those kind of comments are, again, we got those from prospects, we got those from partners, we got those from, you know, if we went to industry events where, yes, okay, it's an industry event where payments people are, but if you're going to a prospects of meeting and the first thing they engage you with is, here's the LinkedIn guy again, you know something's
perfect.
working.
Yeah.
And I think they're the kind of qualitative metrics that businesses can sometimes overlook.
Yeah.
Unless somebody comes to them and says in their self-reported attribution or whatever it might be, we want to talk to XYZ about why, because we listen to your podcast, they don't believe it's working.
So
yeah.
Yeah. So I suppose before you get to the point where you've got self-reported attribution on your website and you're seeing, you know, high intent leads come through telling you that they heard about person X on LinkedIn, what are the early wins and the early signs that you look for in order to like prove out that this is working? Like the early signs are good. We need to continue with this, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you said about rocking up to a prospect and saying, oh, you know, heard about, like, seen you on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But like, what are the things that businesses should look out for in the early signs? Because, yeah, as marketers, we are so under the spotlight when it comes to ROI and measurability and making sure that every little bit of time we have and every resource we have, every single penny that we have
Is scrutinized.
is scrutinized so much. Like we do need some way in order to say the early signs of this are good. We don't have, you know, measurable ROI yet, but like it's in its infancy. What can you look for there?
I mean, fundamentally what we looked for is, initially it was engagement from the right audience. It was then reach. So how did our personal brand reach compare to our company reach? That was a very quick, easy kind of like, right,
Yeah.
well, that was pretty easily found out.
No-brainer.
It was a no-brainer for us. It was personal brand scale 10 times as fast as a company channel, which, okay, fair enough. So we started to look at impressions, we started to look at comments, engagements from those people. And then, you know, I quickly started to realize that just because we were playing the long game, it doesn't mean you're going to get just long-term results. You know, we started the podcast and within weeks we started to have leads not necessarily come to our website, which is what every marketer wants. It's they come in drips and drabs. Then one might come on your website, the other one might message you on WhatsApp, the other one might come to you via LinkedIn DM, the other one might see you at an event the following week and say, yeah, we saw your podcast, we saw you, we see you on LinkedIn, can we come and have a chat? But I think with this whole topic of kind of marketing measurement, using social media for it, how do we measure it? I just wish marketing teams could start to think about social media as a campfire and not just a booth. Being a booth is a static point where you expect people to come over. It's branded. You want people to come to the door and talk to you. And a campfire is something that encourages engagement. It builds conversation. It builds community. That's how social media and specifically LinkedIn should be used as a marketing team, not a distribution channel to throw your value proposition down someone's neck again. And I think that's why we're too busy scrutinizing it, because we're trying to throw value propositions down our ICP's necks when that's not what social media is for. Brand is built through community. It's built on trust. It's built on authenticity. It's built out of entertainment. All these things are what B2B brands struggle to do.
Yeah.
And it's why we're 6 to 7 years behind B2C brands, because when they build brand, they bloody build brand and they do it well. We just don't do it well in B2B, and I'm really not too sure why, but we are in a world now where, you know, I was listening to a podcast the other day and they were saying that goodbye social media and hello interest media.
Interesting.
Which is really interesting to me, because it's apart from LinkedIn, which is the only social media platform now that will prioritize you content based on who you follow or you're connected with. Every other social media platform shows you basing something that you're interested in,
Yeah.
not who you follow or who's liking your content, which is fundamentally for me where LinkedIn will go, because they have followed every other step that every other platform has gone down. They're now going down video. So if we're going to use social media, we've got to start to create content that people are interested in, not what we are interested in.
Yeah, for sure. And I think LinkedIn will go there, or something else will come along and replace LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I hope that isn't the case, but you know, LinkedIn needs to step up its game in terms of serving the right content to the right people. But I liked your campfire analogy.
Yeah.
Like, staying on the campfire analogy front, right? We're on a gap year.
Okay.
There's a few campfires going around. There's a campfire over on the hill over here. There's a campfire, you know, down by the beach over here. How do you craft the right message to get this group of gap year students to your campfire instead of that campfire? Because, you know, I think anybody can put out content on LinkedIn. It's easy. And there are industries where simply by distributing in the right format, you will win, because you're first to it, you're unique in that market. But there are also industries like sales and marketing, which are extremely like overpopulated in terms of, you know, like good formatted content with poor messages. So how do you get that message right in order to grow the audience? Because I think you need both. You need the right format, the right distribution, but the message and the point of view behind it is so important.
Do you know what? I think I'm going to be completely frank here. Is out of all of the podcasts that I've created, which is 3, so not many, but out of all of them that we've created, I have never ever pushed a message through it. Ever. I've never sat down with a head of marketing at the time and said, right, okay, what's our value proposition and why should we push this message down our guest's throat? Because fundamentally, I don't think it's the way you should be doing it. I actually think the more powerful message comes from what your guest has to say. And if your guest is a customer of yours, get them to say your message, don't you say it. And that comes back to having a good product. Because if you've got a good product, people will want to talk about it. And that for me is where, when I build podcast frameworks, is I will build the questions in mind to talk about the topics that are based on our value proposition. But we will never actively sit there and say, address a camera and say, we are XYZ, we help businesses. I don't even put intros on our podcasts. I don't put ads on our podcast. I don't put an interruption in the middle that says, hi, we're Nomupay, we do . I just don't think, because I wouldn't listen to it. I'd switch off and I would skip it. And I do think, again, going back to the point of what do we focus on that's a little bit wrong, is we focus too much on our message. If people, especially on social media, right, there is a massive point for your message. It comes on your website. It comes at a point when a customer already know who you are. But to gain reach in today's world, like I was saying earlier, you've got to be interesting. And most businesses, especially in my industry in payments, your value proposition isn't interesting, because most payments companies do the same thing. They process a payment. Our technology is different, but we do the same thing in regards to a merchant. If they're everything from a kebab shop to a tier 1 retailer, we process a payment. And as far as they're concerned, because again, I spoke to tier 1 retailers where they've got one person internally that manages their payments. He or she doesn't really care about why you're slightly different to your competitor. What they care about is, how are you going to change my internal processes and make them more efficient for me? That's not what your value proposition pushes.
I think there's a difference between your value proposition as a business and your point of view as a personal brand. And actually, no, your point of view as a brand and your point of view as personalities within that brand. Like Justin and Grant and you and anybody else at Nomupay will have a point of view on where they think the industry is now, where they think the challenges are, where they think improvements need to be made holistically within payments and in particular areas too. Do you do anything around documenting what those are and like figuring out what those are, and then how you angle content to that, or does it just come like naturally?
It comes naturally. And
Yeah.
I think this is again something that I probably take for granted in Justin and Grant, which is if you find the right person to be a spokesperson for your business, you shouldn't have to do much of that, because there is a certain element of common sense here. Don't be an idiot on social media. Be opinionated. Don't be an idiot, and you'll be fine. Like, I genuinely think it's that simple.
Yeah.
And Justin and don't get me wrong, there's been times when we've posted things where, oh, that was a bit on the line, or maybe we shouldn't have referenced that, or we've had a phone call straight after saying, you need to maybe take that down, or we've had, because again, to be a good thought leader, I feel like you have to be somewhat controversial, because you have to challenge the way people think.
Challenge the status quo.
You have to, and you can't challenge the way people think or challenge the status quo without being somewhat controversial in what you're thinking, saying, and doing. So there is a fine line, which is why I think some executive level roles struggle with it.
Yeah.
Because you can't be opinionated at that level, especially if it's not your business, because you're afraid of upsetting VCs, investors, employees, future, whatever it might be, right? You've got to think about that. And that's why I think, especially in payments, personal branding never starts from the top, or from what I've seen, it hasn't. Unless, you look at someone like Stripe, where their two founders are very vocal, but it's very PR led, versus them writing their own content on LinkedIn.
It's not totally natural.
Yeah. And these kind of founder led brands are the ones that are gaining traction very, very quickly, because they've got a controversial point of view. And people are like, you know what? I kind of agree with them. Yeah, I agree with them. I like it. I like his way of thinking, her way of thinking.
And what does that give you, though, as a business? When somebody agrees with your opinion and can like rally round you and connect with what you're saying, like, what is the overarching benefit of that?
Well, I think you do you grow a following, and you grow a community around your value proposition, or around your message, and around your opinions, and fundamentally you build trust. And trust will fundamentally get deals done faster, because that's all we're ever looking for in sales. In marketing, I think we're looking for attention. In sales, you're looking for trust. And I think a really interesting way to look at it is, if you do social media correctly, you're gaining both. Pretty quickly. You can gain trust, and you're on a platform where the attention is, so you're kind of doing both. And in sales, I think if you're looking for trust, and you're looking to build a following, there is no better way to do it today than on social media.
Love that. One thing, just on a different kind of angle now, that I really found interesting about you at one of the Demand Gen meetups was, anybody who's watching the video now that can kind of, see this bottle on my phone. Like, we were around a table, and all of a sudden I see George like get his phone out and like whip out the camera and just kind of put his phone like angled towards him. And I was like, that's so clever. Like, he's just capturing these candid moments and these thoughts that we're all kind of having around this table. You kind of address the room, say, by the way, I'm doing this. I won't, share any confidential information, because it's a community where we all share, ideas and things. But prop the phone up. Away you go. There you've got half an hour's worth of content of you speaking, sharing ideas, sharing thoughts, sharing challenges as well. That you can, share with your audience. And I don't know how you get to that point, because I wouldn't have thought to do that. I still don't think to do that. I don't know. It's almost like, is there this barrier that we need to get through in order just to be more comfortable with creating content and capturing like candid moments? Because we all have such great conversations all the time that aren't recorded, that aren't captured. And if they were, they would be amazing content.
You'd have endless amounts of content. And I think that's the point. I realized quite early on that, my way of communicating well is through video and audio. I can't write. You put a blank piece of paper in front of me and ask me to write about exactly what we've talked about, I couldn't do it. I would be bored for a start, and I just wouldn't be able to do it. So I figured that I just need to find a way to capture where I'm good at delivering what I would class as value. And if that means getting my phone out in a meeting and putting it there and saying, look, just for context, I'm not going to repurpose anything with your voice or your face in it. This is only to capture what I'm saying so I can clip it up and put it on social media. That's just how I choose to do it.
Yeah.
And I think if you're a marketer looking to do the same in your industry, that's exactly what you need to look for in your people. Where are they comfortable already delivering value? Is that a sales call? If you're looking to brand your HR manager, where are they good at delivering value? Do they deliver it when they speak into recruiters? Do they deliver best when they're writing? I don't know. Can't even think now. What does a HR manager do?
Job descriptions.
Job descriptions. Yeah. Find
Maybe.
where that person delivers their most value and go and ask them and leverage that. If it's written, leverage written, because there is a big world out there for written people, or people that love to consume written content. It's probably one of the areas that I need to focus on more.
Yeah.
Is, we produce podcasts, but we produce video and audio. We don't necessarily repurpose the transcript for somebody that wants to read something in a long form text. There's lots of that audience out there that, quite frankly, we just don't cater for, and we should. But yeah, to your point, find where you deliver value, and kind of just find a way to capture it. It might feel cringe at start. In fact, it still feels cringe for me now. If I was to, I had a thought a minute ago that we're live on LinkedIn now. I thought, why don't I go live on Instagram? So I was going to get my phone out and literally start going live on Instagram. And I mean, I might do in a minute, but but it's just how my brain works. It's more of a case of when I know I'm in a position where I feel like I'm delivering some form of value. I kind of just, I'm ready to go. I'm like, put a camera in front of me or put a microphone there, and even if it's not a camera, sometimes I'll get my voice memos app on the iPhone.
Yes.
And if I'm in a meeting and I don't feel like I want to record it because I haven't shaved my head or anything like that, I'll put bad hair day. I'll put the voice memos thing on, and I'll use that, and I'll just let it record, and then you can literally copy the transcript directly from your voice memos app and put it into ChatGPT.
And then you've got a long form written piece of content.
And then put it into ChatGPT, ask it to pick out three key things that you covered. And there's 3 LinkedIn posts for you that week.
The amount of content that you can create that is available, the thoughts, the moments that people share in businesses, in meetings, in conversations, getting a coffee.
Yep.
If all of those were captured, and you can find a way to capture 10% of those, like, you will have a goldmine of content.
I mean, we're very much in the context of. So I'm very much, although I'm a demand generation manager, I very much feel like I'm a videographer at the same time. I've definitely like video as much as I possibly can of Justin and Grant and myself, and other people around the business that I'm trying to grow their brands as well, and just film everything. And if we don't want it, we get rid of it.
Yeah.
Because there is like you said, there's so much value in random conversations, and that could literally be in the back of a taxi.
Yeah.
If you're out after work hours and you're on the way to the pub, but in the back of that cab is your head of partnerships, your head of sales, and a prospect.
Yeah.
And they're talking about things because it's off cuff. It's not AI generated. There's no framework. There's no fluff.
So authentic.
It's raw, and you're in the back of a taxi, and people are going to want to watch that content. And I think if you can find a way to leverage that as a business, you will vastly see the benefits of that, doing that at scale.
Yeah. All right. Can we talk a bit about measurement? And
we can try.
And metrics and growth.
Yep.
And we were chatting before this. I had a look at some of the stats that you shared around like Justin and Grant's profile reach and everything like that. And I mean, this is seriously impressive stuff. And on this podcast, we talk about measurement a lot. We talk about ROI a lot, just because it is such a desired thing within so many businesses.
Yeah.
Like, they will ask you time and time again to prove ROI, to make sure that, as we just discussed, the scrutiny across marketing investments is just like no other department.
Yeah.
It's unreal. So, if you could share some insight with the audience about the success that you've seen through these profiles, like, I think that would really give confidence to people to go ahead and start doing this and investing the time and the resource in it.
Yeah, I think, again, going back to the reason this whole started was to, for me, it was to create pipeline without doing it the traditional way.
Yeah, salesperson, right?
Yeah,
that was the priority for you.
exactly. So when I was posting stuff, I was looking for reach because I wanted people to know who I was. I had in the back of my mind that I wanted to build a personal brand, and to do that, you needed reach.
Yeah.
So there are an element of you need to play the algorithms, you need to play the little bit of the game. But yeah, to bring it back to context. So after we look at scale, so we've probably been personal branding through those two profiles now for, I'd argue, a good 15, 16 months of solid. We're talking maybe posting 3 to 4 times a week, a podcast most months at least to generate content on a consistent basis. We've now started to explore LinkedIn Lives. We've gone through multiple different photo shoots, pictures, all this stuff, right? We take pictures. Even if, like you said earlier, you don't like posting a picture of yourself with a post.
But it cringes me out. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I said I sold it to them too. As look, you need to do this as a form of pattern interrupt. You need to be able to. So when people are scrolling through LinkedIn, they see a big picture of you, and then they might engage with it a little bit more. But I've got a couple of notes here in front of me. So if we look at Justin's profile over the last 365 days, we have 218,710 members reached over 365 days, and a total impression count of 2.4 million. So I'm not the ads guy, but I don't know how much money you'd have to spend to reach that amount of people.
Depends on the audience.
True.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at Justin's,
I think the difference is, even though you could maybe, throw a few grand at it, and I mean, maybe tens of thousands for that audience, it might be worthwhile, but it does not have the same connection and authenticity as coming from a person.
Yep.
Like, even though the reach may be the same, the type of reach and the type of engagement and the type of interaction is totally different from a personal brand to a company.
Yeah, because I feel like sometimes when you can, it's the element of building a personal brand versus a corporate brand. I feel like people are going to buy into a person. It's a cliche saying, right? I think I say this on every podcast: is people buy from people. And now we're in a world where people are scalable. You can actually make them scalable. You can make a brand worldwide out of someone in your organization. I mean, Justin talks about it a couple of times when he's bought sales and outreach tools in the past purely because of people on LinkedIn. SalesLoft being one of them. And I'll call her out, Charlotte Johnson.
Yeah.
When you look at Charlotte Johnson, we bought SalesLoft because of her. And she can caption that. She can put it on LinkedIn. She can do what the hell she wants with it. But that was one of the reasons we bought SalesLoft. And I think Tom Boston was also there at the time as well. So we understood how powerful it was because we probably consumed her content for 6 months before we bought. Now, and again, I think when you're looking at measurement, and one thing that I would look at from a marketing perspective, but also a go-to-market level and sales cycle perspective, is how shorter do your sales cycles become? Because although the sales cycles are getting longer, the actual transactional cycles becoming shorter. So, for example, rather than adding a deal into your or a prospect's name into your CRM on day one, because you're actively marketing to, so you're actively prospecting them, so you're emailing them, you're ringing them, it might be 6 months it takes for you to, I don't know, generate a conversation with them where they actually pick up the phone or engage with your email.
Yeah.
But what's the difference in just connecting with them on LinkedIn and serving them consistent content from a personal brand for 6 months? Then they're not in your CRM for 6 months, but when they come to you, it's almost like they have been. That's all we've thought about it as, which is just kind of reverse engineering. The kind of definition of demand gen for me was, kind of market to the 99% and capture the 1%. And that's all we really did. I've kind of gone off track a little bit based on what we were talking about, but I'm seeing you taking notes over there because you might want to go over some more stuff. But
it's all good. It's all good. I mean, I've got a few notes down here just because there are things that we notice as well in terms of the engagement and the high intent leads that we generate from LinkedIn convert at a completely different rate to leads from other channels.
Yeah.
There's a big difference in the way that people and leads for your business interact with your brand and the way that they consume content and the trust and affinity that they build for your brand in different ways. If somebody finds you through Google Ads, there's a good chance that this is a competitive bid. Like they are evaluating you and 5, maybe up to 10 other businesses.
Yep.
Because it's quite a research orientated task that they're undertaking. But we found that inquiries that we got from LinkedIn, high intent leads we were generating from LinkedIn, would close and generate pipeline at a much higher rate. Volume was lower, and okay, we've had to rely on ads as well for reach because we don't have the personal reach yet of our profiles. But even still, a good number of high intent leads converting into pipeline at a very, very high rate, and close one at a high rate too, because the connection they build with your brand is entirely different.
We've seen the same trend.
Is different.
Yeah, we've seen the same trend. There's been multiple times when, Justin or Grant will send me a screenshot of like, look at this is what's happened. And it will be a message from someone they've never seen before. Yeah, a DM that's come from LinkedIn. And it'll be a case of, look, can we have a conversation? Because I'm having X, Y, and Z challenge that you spoke about for 6 months. And I've tried to work it out with the stuff you're giving me for free, but I also need your help. And I talk about this a lot from a perspective of to help people understand what this really looks like. Is if you watch Dragon's Den, somebody like Stephen Bartlett is sat there knowing people want him before they even come in the den.
So true. Yeah.
If you watch it, I literally saw a clip on the other day and it was a guy that was in there and Peter Jones was getting a bit kind of arsy about it because he was like, why does everybody think that Stephen Bartlett's the only guy that could do marketing sat here? And I'm like, because he's the only one that vocally talks about it and has done for years. Markets himself and shows you that he can deliver results on what you'd essentially be paying him for. I just think that's what personal branding is. If you can find a niche in your industry where you're constantly delivering value for free without giving away too many secrets, because there is an element of what you need to charge for, but there'll be a subconscious question that's going on in the back of your prospect's mind saying, if he's helping me this much for free, what happens if I pay him?
Yeah,
I'm going to get a lot of value.
Yeah,
and I just think we need to think a little bit more like that.
Yeah, and you don't have to get to this level straight away, but where you're getting DMs from people, you can filter all of that information into your CRM and start tagging opportunities and deals with the source that they came from. And you will soon see that the sources that enable buyers to build up affinity and trust with you in the first place will convert buyers at a much higher rate. Like there's no two ways about
because
it.
It's trust.
I've seen the trend over and over again.
Because it's trust.
Yeah,
it just is. And I think video is the easiest way to build trust with an audience without even directly talking to them.
Yeah.
I just think we should leverage it far more than we do, especially in B2B. We're live on LinkedIn now. I don't think that's used enough.
It's not. Yeah. I mean, I don't see it very often.
I see it from marketing agencies like yourself. You do a great job of it. But in payments, I think we're probably the only ones doing it.
Yeah.
And we're not even doing, and like I said, we're doing it very much from a £30 a month Riverside subscription, which is nothing in comparison. It doesn't cost much. It really doesn't. Just interacting real time and being present on a platform where people want to be.
You don't need a studio like this either. No. Phil and I, did the first 20-30 episodes of Demand Decoded just in the office, or I was at home, he was at home, just our laptop mics and cameras, and this generated great content, like great repurposed content as well for our website. Like, we're heavy into written content, still see amazing value from blogs and from, longer form pages too.
Yeah.
And, it just enabled us to repurpose all of that, our unique point of view into that content as well.
Yeah.
Should we go over these quick fire questions?
I mean, we can.
you know, unless there was anything left on
No, I think I'm just trying to pick up. I think Nikki said something on the chat,
measurement.
which was said, yes, there's definitely a barrier, and you need to break down yourself by just doing. The less you do, the more you'll lose it. The less you do,
I
the
love a
more
good
you lose.
riddle.
Yeah, how does that make sense? The less you do, the more you do it.
The less you do, the more you'll lose it.
You're gonna have to come if Licky's
That makes
still in.
sense.
Does it?
The less you do, if you do less, you're going to lose it. You're going to lose that craft, that
Okay,
ability
yes.
to, like, you know, convey an idea, talk
Yeah,
to the
yeah, yeah.
camera.
Yeah.
Like, you just need to do it. Like, just get on with it.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. But again, it comes back to that point of if you're doing something that you're already comfortable doing, and that doesn't like I said, it doesn't have to be live. You can conduct your sales calls in an environment that's recorded. You know, let's
Yeah.
look at GDPR, whatever it might come.
Most of them are recorded already.
Exactly. So you can record them and you can go back and you can repurpose them in a way that you feel comfortable doing so. Just find a way where you're delivering value and find a way to capture it. It would be my biggest piece of advice if you want to start a personal brand and you don't necessarily want to sit there and be on camera all the time. That's just my biggest
Find
piece
what
of
works
advice.
for you.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all you have to do. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Biggest lessons learnt so far on this personal branding journey that's encompassed you, Justin, Grant, everyone else along the way.
The level of creative in the content is more valuable than how you deliver it. So if you,
what do you think?
Yeah.
Like when you say creative,
so
you mean
if you create good content, it doesn't matter how you package it; it will still be
okay.
consumed.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you, like I said, some of the biggest posts that we've done, and some of the biggest stuff and the biggest reach that we've got has come from the stuff that's been put together in an hour.
Yeah.
With hardly any production behind it at all. It's been me sat in the back of a taxi, or me sat in the back of a meeting, you know, just taking pictures of Justin, or taking pictures of Grant, or videoing James or Mark in the other teams. And it quite frankly doesn't matter how you package up content, as long as the framework of how you're delivering it is good.
Yeah.
I think people obsess over, I can't start this because I don't have a camera. Like my point earlier, right? Get your phone out and record it. Your camera on your phone is better than what Hollywood had 20 years ago. Use your phone.
Yeah.
Right. It's far easier than you think. They're just excuses.
Everyone's got a laptop, you know.
Yep.
Like.
I was actually looking at the LinkedIn Live repurpose stuff in the back end of Riverside, and when you're doing a LinkedIn Live, it doesn't necessarily come across as the best quality because it's streaming it directly to the cloud and saving it to the cloud. But when you actually then repurpose it, it's like 1080p 4K quality.
You get the local video
saved anyway, local video save, which is perfect. And there's just, quite frankly, if you're trying to, if your excuse is that you don't have the right equipment or the right package, I think that's just an excuse. That's all it is.
Yeah. Just then Nikki's laughing at us because
we didn't get him.
We just
didn't get his question.
Yeah. Like, we just couldn't decipher the code.
And congrats, Nikki, by the way, on the new role.
Yeah, I saw that.
I did see that.
Yeah. Amazing, Nikki. All right. What else we got on here? Quick fire. Was it quick fire? That was probably about 5 minutes.
Yeah, that was a long one.
Quicker next time, please, George. One thing you wish you'd known earlier.
People care more about the fact that they're not doing it versus you doing it. So what I mean by that is,
I like that.
Yeah, people care when they see you doing it. They care more about the fact that they're not doing it. It's like back in school, right? You used to be scared of going to school with a spot on your face, but you know, everyone's too concerned about their own spot on their face to care about yours. And I just feel like we're out of school now, and you just need to grow up a little bit. And if that's the kind of, you know, advice somebody needs, then if somebody's willing to call you out on social media, then, like I said, feel sorry for them. But a lot of people are more concerned about why they're not doing it to really care too much about why you're doing it. They just see you doing it.
Yeah. And also, it's still engagement. You know, if somebody disagrees with you, good.
Good.
You know,
it creates good content.
it means that you have a controversial opinion in the market, and that your point of view is getting interest from an audience.
Yep.
So great. You know, be controversial and embrace people disagreeing with you at times.
100%. Yeah. Like, again, go back to the things that taught me in sales is get used to no. get used to people not agreeing with you, because and I think that's essentially maybe the resilience that I take for granted today, which is I quite frankly don't care what people think about me, as long as I'm not offending anyone,
Yeah.
which I never have. It's just a case of I'm only voicing my opinions and what I'm learning and how I'm learning it. If people disagree with it, they're only disagreeing it because it's their opinion, and I'll challenge their opinion and they can challenge my opinion. But that's the point of debate.
Yeah.
That's how I've learned over the time, is listening to controversial people.
Yeah.
And not taking everything at face value, digging into it a little bit, understanding, no, you don't necessarily mean that, you mean this, and getting people's different perspective on things. And I think that's how you learn.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like we've probably covered this one off, but top tip for someone starting out. And I say, when we say starting out, I suppose everybody here listening probably has a LinkedIn profile.
Mm-hmm.
Some probably have never posted to it, or they've just reposted the company page.
Yeah.
How do they start out creating content for themselves or the key people in their business on a consistent basis that will generate impact?
Yeah, I think fundamentally you've got to understand what's initially holding you back and actually understand that. Is it just your excuses around equipment and insecurity and this, that, and the other, or is it actually barriers that your company have put in place as to you can't post on LinkedIn? It needs to go through marketing, it needs to go through whatever it needs, all these loops that it has to potentially go through before it can go out. Once you identify those, it's fundamentally, again, finding a way to produce content that's like you'll find a way to get someone doing what they're natural at.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have to be on camera, it doesn't have to be on a podcast, it doesn't have to be live. Just find a way to get someone feeling a little bit more comfortable in camera if you can. If that means recording them in a meeting, putting a microphone under their shirt, whatever it might be, do whatever you have to do. Make them feel comfortable in the environment they're in, and you'll be mind blown around how many people can actually deliver good content. You just got to help them do it and put them in the right environment to do it, which is not sat in a fancy studio in a polished area with a camera down their face and asking them to read from a teleprompter, because that's quite intimidating. And if they get it wrong, they get it wrong. But if you're allowing someone to actually be who they are, use language they like, and deliver a message in the way that they want to deliver it in, they're far likely to deliver you more authentic content rather than you trying to script it.
Yeah. And when it comes to personal branding and links in content and content now, like content in today's world, actually, have you seen that thing called the millennial pause versus the Gen Z shake? Is it something like that?
I haven't.
Where if you scroll through like TikTok or Instagram Reels, you'll see that every young person, I don't know what Gen Z is, under like 21, will start a video like, getting their phone up and like start it straight away. Whereas like millennials will be like, hi, there'll be like 3 seconds or so where they'll pause, and it's like, I don't even know where I'm going with that point, actually.
No, but the point is, but I think it's what you've done is you've covered exactly why people want to watch content from a different generation, because there's no, hi, you're putting a mask on. You don't talk to people like that when you meet them. And I think I've started to do this. If people go to my Instagram, you'll start to see the way I've started to create my golf content is I've actually, rather than just showing you my golf swing, I've started to like show you the parts where I'm kind of like interacting with people. I'm laughing at jokes. I'm shanking it. I'm
drinking in the clubhouse.
Drinking in the clubhouse. I'm sipping my coffee. I'm tying my shoes up. I'm doing all these little things because I'm testing in my head, well, what do people want to watch? Not that they want to watch me tie my shoes up, but it'll be how I start a video.
Yeah.
Rather than me sitting there addressing the camera and saying, hi, I'm George. I did. Because it's like, that's just false and people don't want to watch it.
Yeah. I think my point was, it doesn't have to be polished.
Correct.
Like sitting somebody down in front of a camera with a teleprompt with 3 big studio lights, like you say, is intimidating. And it doesn't have to be like that. People don't even want to see that type of content, especially on LinkedIn, on TikTok. Short form content doesn't need to be that polished.
No.
And, spending a ton of money, a ton of time, and a ton of effort before you've even established something first, and investing in that is just not worth it.
There's an area for polished content, right? I think you'll agree with me in regards to like website content. If you wanted to do,
Oh,
I don't know, a
100%.
brand video or something like that. But again, it comes back to the point of why we use social media. People don't want to go on social media to be served polished ads and polished video of everybody in their perfect self. That's not what people want to see. People want to see people in their imperfect self, because that's what people are really like. They want to see people that they can connect with. They're like, yeah, I might have a bit of a stupid laugh, but so do you by the looks of it. You know, it's all of these things that build confidence in people and kind of help people engage with content on a higher level. I just find it interesting how I log into LinkedIn every day and just see everything of the opposite that we talk about, which is more and more polished content, more and more carousels, more and more XYZ. And it's just like, just think outside the box a little bit. And test and have fun. I think that's the point in marketing. You know, I think we've lost a little, especially in B2B, we've lost a little bit of that. And I think that does come down to fundamentally the scrutiny we have over numbers sometimes. I think we lose our creativity in marketing sometimes.
Yeah, there's a balance. You need the numbers, you need the measurability, you need the ROI. Like you have to understand that what you're doing is having a measurable impact on the business. But at the same time, it can't limit the creativity and like the ambitions that you have, I don't think.
I think there are elements of creativity that you can really leverage into in B2B. I just think it's going to be hard to get the budget for it. And it's going to be hard to get it signed off because, again, your finance manager or your finance CFO is going to say, well, what's the ROI of that? And they're like, well, that's not quite how this works. And I think if you're trying to quantify brand, it's a really, really difficult conversation. And quite frankly, we could probably go into it for another hour. And I'm not sure we have that time.
No, but I'm quite, passionate on the measurability and ROI side of things, because I think it does come and it is there. You say that, well, and you've shown me that, Justin and Grant regularly get DMs about people, wanting their help with when it comes to payments, and all of that stuff can be measured and can be tracked in a CRM. It's just being able to deploy it and do it correctly to get that insight, because it is possible. And it's about combining those things that might come in 6 to 12 months of doing said activity with the early signals that you can get, and the market research that enables you to, go to whoever you need to put a business case together and justify the investment and saying, our audience is here. They consume content in this way. They resonate with this message. We can meet them where they are with the right message here and, generate trust, build affinity, and do all of these great things.
And I think I think payments is an industry where your partnership ecosystem is so powerful for your business growth. Like, for example, if I can set the scene for someone, if we're looking at going after, retailers from a payments perspective, we as a payment provider need to integrate into shopping carts. Now, shopping carts will be the likes of Wix, Shopify, WooCommerce, Magento, blah, blah, blah. Now, with that partnership ecosystem being incredibly powerful, really lean on them to help you create content. That's all we did. Is again, we were working in the kind of lending and debt management space, and there's so many partnerships out there that want to create content with you. And if you've got a podcast, they really lean on that, and they're like, oh, they've got a podcast, let's go on their podcast and talk to them. And because we're going to get video out of it, we're going to get content out of it. And I think your podcast isn't a selfish thing. And I think if you can think of a podcast as it's actually a way to make your business more efficient. It's a way for you to conduct market research. It's more than just creating content for personal brands. I think we spoke about that a lot today, but there are so many other things you can do with a podcast that are outside of personal branding. Market research is a key one for us. Let's go and talk to the people that we're trying to sell to, and what gets them going, what gets them fired up. What is important for a retailer? What's important for an insurer? What regulation have they got coming down the line that's going to affect payments? All of these questions you can start conducting market research around that you wouldn't know about that industry if you didn't go and talk to them or have a massive portfolio of customers that are telling you this is coming. It's far more than just sitting behind a camera and creating a personal brand. Far more than it.
Awesome. All right.
I think we covered a lot there.
Yeah. maybe we should wrap it up now. Do I wrap this up or do you wrap it up? Seeing as
I
we're
don't know.
live on your account,
We're
but
live
it's
on my
kind of my
account, but I
podcast.
suppose it's your podcast, but my account. I mean, look, I'll wrap it up. I'll
Go
just
on.
say, look, thank you everyone for being here. I'm not sure how many people we had. I know Sarah's just left a comment in there saying the collab we've all been waiting for,
Haven't we all? Including us.
Yeah, look, thank you everyone. It's been great. I'm going to go back through and kind of maybe look at the comments and look at who's attended and drop you a message and say thank you, because it's been, like I said, I'm really leaning into LinkedIn Live because it's a strategy that I'm looking to achieve from a personal brand perspective, but also from Nomupay's angle. We're really leaning into it because it's authentic and it's going to build trust with an audience. So thank you all for being here, and it's been great.
Cool. Right. Catch you later.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.